3 months ago, we started our journey across North America with the aim of riding from Vancouver to New York City. But somewhere along the way, we started thinking that ending in New York didn't seem right, that there was more of this huge continent to explore. We started thinking that what if instead of getting on a plane in New York, we kept on going, following the long and winding roads all the way to Mexico. We started thinking about the Atlantic coast, Florida trails, Southern hospitality, and Texas barbecue. We started thinking about riding south. Riding through the streets of Manhattan was a lot of fun and a really exciting way to start this leg of our adventure. We rode in the shadow of the huge skyscrapers en route to the best way to escape the city, the ferry, which took us past the Statue of Liberty as we waved goodbye to New York. We landed on the Jersey Shore, and the difference in landscape couldn't have been more drastic, as we were immediately riding tree-lined trails on our way to our first warm showers hose house of this leg of our trip. They were even nice enough to ride out with us in the morning, and now it was our first full day heading south. The adventure we had ahead of us was starting to sink in. What you doing?
Riding to Mexico.
Our route would take us down the Atlantic coast to Florida, then we'd turn west and head for the Mexican border in Texas. Just approaching Philadelphia, first big city since we've left New York, on our way to Mexico. And as we left Philadelphia, it was time to say goodbye to the big East Coast cities and get back into some rural riding. Out in the Delaware countryside now. It's been really nice riding today. Finally out in the rural farming areas, and a bit of water on the road too. Riding the quiet country roads with the sun shining and the wind at our backs, we couldn't have been happier, living life on our bikes. Good morning, just had a nice cold night's sleep. First night back in the tent after leaving New York. We slept behind this fire station last night, behind this dumpster, and yeah, this is our life. Just crossed the border into Maryland now. I'm just riding along the boardwalk here at Ocean City. Sort of like a big resort town, and it's pretty nice. It's been pretty quiet the last few days as we make our way down the coast. We've left Maryland today and we're in Virginia now. As you can see, the land is pretty bare. It's just after harvest season, not much around. It's just a few quiet farms, and so I think we're just gonna find another church to camp out behind tonight, and yeah, see how we go. Camping at churches was really common for us in the US, because there's no shortage of them, and we always felt safe and welcome there. We'd always ask for permission to camp if possible, but if not, we'd just set up out of sight and leave the space as clean as when we found it. We managed to find a little church here last night to camp behind. Been pretty chilled camping in this section of the route. It's really just farmland and all the locals are pretty cool, so we're not too worried about camping anywhere. We're making our way down to Chesapeake Bay today, which is a huge bridge about 20 kilometres over the water. So we're going to have to get a lift over that section and then head down to Virginia Beach and out of Virginia, and we'll be in North Carolina tomorrow.
I've seen about a 7-foot gator right on the road and it's arms sticking straight out.
Yeah.
I started walking towards it, I seen the eyeball. I started walking backwards.
Just rocked up to this church thinking we might be able to stay here tonight, but it's extremely exposed to the road. There's no one around to ask, so this is sort of the part that sucks when we spend a few hours figuring out where we're going to sleep tonight. But soon we found the perfect spot. Found a little spot to camp out just under this water tower. A little barbed wire fence next to us. Can't ask for much more. We've been flying down the coast of North Carolina pretty quick the last few days. The wind's been at our back, so we're making up some big kilometres each day, which is why I thought about it, buy these cool sunnies. Look the part, you know, high performance, high speeds. We are just north of Wilmington now, and we've been staying at a whole bunch of churches and hunting grounds still, but we've got a nice warm showers lined up when we get there, so looking forward to that, and also looking forward to some North Carolina barbecue. Just before we headed out onto North Carolina's Outer Banks, we stayed with an amazing warm showers host who not only lived in a beautiful location, but made us feel like we were staying with close friends. A really nice feeling when you've been on the road for so long. Just riding along this bridge on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and I was not prepared for how big this bridge is. The thing must be, I don't know, 6 or 7k long. A bit daunting. The Outer Banks are a 300-kilometre long chain of islands off the coast of North Carolina. Connected by ferries, they're a great place to ride along the ocean and enjoy Atlantic sunsets. We just camped here right next to the ferry terminal last night because it was pretty late by the time we got off the ferry, so we just stayed right next to the road. A few camper vans camped here as well, and we'll head off again this morning, nice and cold. As it was now the end of October, temperatures were dropping as we made our way south, but we were kept warm by southern barbecue and southern hospitality. We just stopped at this church in Charlotte here and met the pastor and asked if he had a place for us to camp overnight, and not only did he let us camp out back, but he brought us a beautiful pasta dinner. As we made our way into South Carolina, we tried to ride as many trails as possible because it would be mainly highways between here and Florida. And on one of these trails, we stumbled upon this old church that the caretaker told us was visited by none other than George Washington himself. And as usual, we were seeking shelter wherever we could, thanks to the kindness of strangers. So I've been staying at a few churches and fire stations lately, and today it's just pouring with rain, so we're just actually hanging out at this fire station, having a cup of coffee, hoping the rain will pass. But sometimes when bad weather hits, there's no other option than the comfort of a cheap motel. This is what it looks like after a night in a very wet tent, when we have to get a cheap hotel room and just dry everything out. We weren't the only ones out in the rain though, and we were pretty happy when we met this little guy. Hey little armadillo. Hey, what you doing? The roads from Charleston, South Carolina, all the way through Georgia were not a lot of fun to ride, and it may sound strange to some, but we were really looking forward to getting to Florida. We're just riding along Fernandina Beach down here in Florida now, which means that we're pretty much at the end of the Atlantic coast route for us since leaving New York. To be honest, it hasn't been the best riding. There's been a lot of highway, often with no shoulder, so the riding hasn't been the most enjoyable here in this part of the US, but we've met some great people, stayed at some cool places to camp. But we're looking forward to turning west now, getting onto the Southern Tier Adventure Cycling Association route and seeing what that holds for us. Florida greeted us with beautiful waterways, friendly bike paths and blue skies as we made our way to another great Warm Showers host's house, who helped us fix our bikes in preparation for our push west towards Texas. So we've gotten off the Atlantic coast route, which was a bit of relief because the end of that route was pretty horrible, a lot of riding the highway. Now we've turned which way? West? Turned west onto the Southern Tier here in Florida, riding some rail trails, which is really nice to get off the road. So far so good. On towards Gainesville today. Florida had started out great for us, with fun riverside trails to ride and lots of good places to camp. We just had to be wary of some of the locals. And pretty soon we were back out into the countryside, riding on rural roads without a care in the world. We are about 100-ish kilometres east of Tallahassee now, and just really nice countryside riding, quiet roads. And I think this has probably been my favourite stretch of this part of the trip between New York and Mexico so far, because it's just chilled out, feels a bit like the Midwest. Just dudes driving trucks, cows and farmland everywhere. Feels good. Then one afternoon, while standing outside a supermarket, we got chatting to a friendly local couple who were interested in our trip. They were nice enough to invite us back to stay in their guest house on their ranch. We spent the night enjoying some great southern hospitality and left with stomachs and hearts full, thankful for new friends and the great experiences a trip like this brings. The next day we headed to another Warm Showers host's house, where we stayed in a cosy cabin, ate more great food, and even went gator spotting. Then a quick ride through the state capital of Tallahassee took us to yet another stunning campsite. And of course, for research purposes, we had to try out some Florida barbecue before we left. We just left Tallahassee yesterday, had a good little feed at a barbecue restaurant in there on the way through, and a nice camp spot last night. We are taking the 20 as we get towards Pensacola sort of area, and instead of taking the ACA route which follows the 90, this is a bit more remote, and so far so good. Not much traffic, a few trucks, that's about it. We just arrived in Freeport today after a big day of headwinds. We've had a lot of headwinds the last couple of days, so it's been a bit of a battle, and we pulled up to a church and asked if it was all right if we camped in their yard, and they said even better, we can camp in this little shed they got out the side. And we were just super stoked because we are very easily pleased. So let's have a look inside our little dusty shed. Very happy campers. We turned south towards the Gulf of Mexico and crossed these turquoise waters with dolphins and manatees swimming below us. Just out on Dauphin Island here in Alabama, someone on a Warm Showers host has allowed us to camp under their house while they're not here. So Laura's just cooking up a meal, got the tent set up, all good to go. Pretty nice out here. When we entered Mississippi, we were greeted by its famous fishing industry, as well as endless coastline riding, which we hadn't really anticipated. But it felt a lot less like the laid-back rural Mississippi you see in movies, and more like a struggling resort area full of casinos and boardwalks. A lot of bridges around this neck of the woods. Just on our way to New Orleans. It was Thanksgiving yesterday. It's bloody freezing. We usually think of road closed signs as more of a suggestion than a rule, and sometimes they actually lead to some of the best riding we do, as there's no chance of any other traffic, at least no cars anyway. Obviously be careful if you choose to do the same, but if a few barriers are your biggest problem, it's usually worth giving it a go. After a few days off the bikes in New Orleans eating gumbo and beignets, we rode out into the Louisiana countryside, and after getting turned down for a place to camp at a few churches, we were invited in by Earl, a friendly mechanic. So we left New Orleans yesterday, just headed out aimlessly, not knowing where we'd sleep as usual, and ended up here last night. We found a mechanic who took us in for the night after we asked at his shop, and spent the night here in his garage where he restores cars like this Camaro behind me, and he also happens to be a professional drag car racer, so pretty funny place to spend the night, and some Louisiana hospitality. We're just leaving Morgan City in Louisiana, where we camped last night. We had a terrible sleep because someone in town told us that Morgan City was a pretty dodgy place to be and that we were likely to get robbed at gunpoint or get our bike stolen. So pretty rough night's sleep behind a church there, worried about something happening. But we got a warm showers house tonight, so it should be much better. We were pretty happy to ask just about anywhere in the US for somewhere to put up our tent, which meant that we ended up camping at some pretty interesting places. Just pulled into a little stables area, a little farm here, horse farm, and asked if we can camp here overnight because it's going to be about 2 degrees overnight, so it's going to be freezing, and we can do with getting out of the wind. So nice to have somewhere that we can stay that might be warming up with these guys, our new friends. It's going to be a cold one. The cold weather meant that we'd have all our winter gear on while we were on the bikes, and was a great excuse to get a campfire going and eat the American classic, s'mores. So we're in Texas now, and a couple rainy days on the road. We've finally made it down to a place called High Island, and we've, as usual, been asking at fire stations if we can stay for the night, usually just camping out back, but tonight they invited us inside. We had a shower, used the kitchen, and now we're bunking down behind the trucks for the night. Riding along the beachfront here on the Mexican Gulf through Texas. It's a crazy amount of smoke up ahead. Don't know if it's actual fire or an oil field or what it is, but hopefully we can get through. We'll find out. The smoke turned out to be steam from one of the many refineries that line this coast. I know that oil is an essential part of our lives, but it's still worrying to think of the impact it's having on our natural environment. Just left the town of Port Lavaca this morning, where we ended up staying an extra day because the weather was pretty rough, and we slept in, and by the time we were going to get going it was 1 p.m. so stayed another day. Now the weather hasn't really gotten that much better. It's really strong headwinds as we head out into the nothingness of Texas. Not getting anywhere fast, and don't know where we're going to sleep tonight. Where we ended up sleeping would soon be decided for us, as we met yet another bunch of legends who insisted we come back to their ranch with them to stay the night and do the things you do in Texas.
Oh! There you go!
It was really great to meet these guys and have a proper Texas experience. And while we might have had different views on gun laws, we definitely had a lot of fun and made more friends for life. And when we left, it was time for our final push towards the Mexican border. So final day, heading towards the Mexican border at Laredo. We're just about halfway between Freer and Laredo now. It's a 100k stretch that we really didn't want to ride because we got told the road was pretty horrible, but it's pretty much just like any other highway, lots of trucks. Bit of shoulder at the moment though, so all good. And yeah, hopefully we get to Laredo, the Savo, all good. Mexico tomorrow, yeah. As we reflected on our time in the US, we found we had mixed feelings. While we'd met some incredible people along the way, we found the overall disregard for the environment and selfish worldview confronting, made worse by the current political situation. And we were looking forward to crossing the border and getting into Mexico. Let's walk along the bridge, crossing the border, the USA to Mexico. Bye bye! If you'd like to keep following our trip around the world or catch up with where we've been before, subscribe to this channel and find us on Instagram at We Ride Bikes Places.